the middle tier, I want to start with the team that I think is that I had a hard time not including them on the first tier.
Okay.
And that is the Atlanta Hawks.
Okay.
Because I think the Atlanta Hawks had a very good offseason.
I agree.
love what Ansi Sala is doing in Atlanta. Just going all in on this season. Like all in. No extension for Trae Young, who has a player option next summer. We're going to surround him with all the help he's been looking for. We're going to spend on getting Kristaps Porzingis in on the last year of his contract. We're going to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is a versatile wing that proven to be an effective player in the postseason. We've got hopefully a healthy Jalen Johnson, Zach Richache in year 2, Dyson Daniels coming off one of the best defensive seasons of his career, Luke Kennard in that mix. They have created a roster that if Trae Young is who he purports to be, can win the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Like they can. The reason I keep them in that middle tier right now is we haven't seen any of it. We've seen this is a melting pot of players that is being put together for the first time, but I am bullish on Atlanta's chances of becoming a top-tier team very quickly.
I am too. I think they're way underrated. I spent a chunk of time with them last season doing a piece on Trae Young, and you look at, yes, obviously he will always be a defensive liability. He's just too small not to be, right? But if you look at the ways he has shaped and molded his game in recent seasons, people look at, his scoring is down. His scoring is down because he's passing the ball more, because he is trying to play more in a team concept. That is what people asked of him. And he, in fact, led the NBA in assists, and not by a little bit. It was a record amount of leading the NBA in assists. There are things on that team that as a team are working, and I like Quinn, and I feel like those pieces are good. Dyson Daniels is an amazing story with, I think, the best nickname going right now in the NBA, the Great Barrier Thief. And
plays the passing lanes as well as any player in the NBA last season.
Right.
Incredible.
A little Aussie action there. And I'm really enjoying Richache. He's getting great experience right now in Eurobasket. I think it's going to be very valuable to them. I think they are underrated. I'm pleased to see you put them in here because they were in mine too.
Yeah, if it goes well, Trae's going to get his money. I think more teams should do this. Trae's going to get his money. Yeah. Porzingis will probably be brought back. Yeah. And you keep building around that core. If it doesn't, a couple of guys come off the books. Yep. Trae Young winds up getting traded, and you reboot with, was it that Pelicans draft pick they got their hands on about a month or so ago.
Talk about Great Barrier Thief.
The team that I am putting in the middle after them is Milwaukee. And I don't know where else to put them, really. You can't put them in the contender position because even though Giannis is still Giannis, arguably the top two-way player in the NBA, MVP candidate, once again. And I like the Miles Turner move as well. I think that's an upgrade over Brook Lopez. And I give John Horst and Bucks ownership a ton of credit for being willing to eat the largest contract ever eaten in Damian Lillard's in NBA history. I just look at the rest of that roster and I'm like, Kyle Kuzma was okay for them last season, not great numbers. Kevin Porter Jr. has made a nice little comeback with Milwaukee. Gary Trent is a good player. But if you're talking about a team contending for a conference championship, I don't see it. Not with this group. They can win without Dame. They were 10-4 when he went out with that deep vein thrombosis before the playoffs. So they can win, but I don't see them being on the same level as, even Atlanta on that mix. I'd even put Atlanta as like a cut above them on my tier list. Look,
they feel like a second-round team, right? That would be an improvement, by the way, because it's the past 3 seasons they've been knocked out in the first. Yeah. Just getting to the playoffs healthy would be an exciting improvement for them. But it's Giannis, man. And I would say that partly depending on the bracket, I think that's a huge underrated part of predicting playoff things that we just don't take into consideration because we can't, because we don't know what the bracket's going to be. But I can see them getting to a conference finals. If they get the right draw, everyone's healthy.
They keep getting beat in the first round, though. Even when they've
had injuries every single time in the first round for the last 3 years.
Now they just don't have the talent, though. They had, Drew Holiday, and they had, the backcourt's the biggest concern for me.
Right.
How, Cole Anthony was a nice little signing for them.
Yeah.
Maybe he eats some minutes up at point guard, but I just don't think a Kevin Porter Jr., Cole Anthony starting point guard, that doesn't put you in play. Yeah. I think you've got to find a way to get somebody. Maybe they smash that Russell Westbrook emergency button and see if they can.
Did you see that video, by the way?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that was.
Must be nice to be working out and hooping on your yacht.
Yeah, It's nice. It's life goals.
Yeah.
You can do that. But I just don't
court,
think they have the horses there in the backcourt.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I wouldn't put them in the top tier, and I wouldn't predict they're making the conference finals, but I wouldn't be shocked if they did, and I would see them more as a second-round team, which, again, is not up to the standard that Giannis has said he wants to stay in Milwaukee. He says he wants to win another title, but it would be an improvement from the last few years, not just last year, the last few years. And so if they can manage that, if they can get to the second round, and then they've got a little more flexibility after that, maybe you can continue convincing him to stay, or maybe it won't be going well, and by the middle of the season, he'll make it known that, before the trade deadline, they've got to move him.
All right, let me give you the next team on my list, and that's Detroit, which took its lumps last year in the playoffs. Huge improvement last season.
Yeah.
44 wins. JB Bickerstaff, outstanding job his first year in Detroit. They made some changes this offseason. Malik Beasley, probably gone. We'll see what happens with him the next couple of weeks. Dennis Schroeder gone. Tim Hardaway Jr. gone. Karis LeVert is in. Duncan Robinson is in. And look, this was a team that saw Cade Cunningham take like a superstar turn last year. Like, he finally put it all together, stayed healthy, stayed on the floor, proved he's a franchise player. They've got a whole bunch of young guys that are probably going to get better organically. Oscar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Ron Holland, who is played a lot for them, even though he still can't shoot. Isaiah Stewart, I've been reading about him shooting threes this year. Maybe that's a game changer for them. I think Detroit's going to be a threat. I think they're at least at 44 wins. And, if they can get some, growth organically from some of these young guys, I think they're a team that's in play.
Yeah, I think so. Another NBA media darling. Everyone likes to talk about the Pistons and the Magic. Cade Cunningham is absolutely the real deal. If you had any question going into the season, you shouldn't have any more. Not just on the court, where we saw huge growth from him, but every conversation you have with someone in the organization talks about his leadership, what he's willing to do for his teammates, sacrifice for his teammates, encourage his teammates, that he doesn't get ruffled. I think that's just a hallmark of having a real center for years to come, not just on the court, but emotionally. And teams need that to go deep in the playoffs. You need to have the guy. And again, you need to have the guy on the court, but you also need the guy that everyone in the locker room feels is just a tree and that they can depend on. And I love that about this team. I have questions about, you just had a lot of ifs there, right? So if this happens, if they grow, if they all gel together, it's a little bit of what you were talking about before about on paper, everyone in Atlanta looks great, but let's see what it actually is in practice. So I'm a little bit sort of let's wait and see on the Pistons, but I certainly expect them to continue to be on the rise, which is exciting in Detroit, where that hasn't been the case for prior to last year.
Yeah, I like the Karis LeVert addition. I think that's a piece that they need, a guy that can take some ball handling responsibilities, probably on the downside of his career at this point, but still can be a productive, 6th, 7th man with that team. And again, a lot of people talk about Amen Thompson, justifiably so. Oscar Thompson, another guy that if he can just develop a jump shot, he's going to be an incredibly good player, elite defensive player, gets the rim. We'll see with Ron Holland, does he develop more of a jump shot in year 2? There is a lot of ifs, but that young talent, the core is real, and I really like them. The other team that's on my list that may not be on yours, the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yes, they are on this part of my list. I am so glad to hear you say this.
People aren't really talking about Philadelphia right now.
That's an understatement. Yeah. People are just writing them off.
Yeah, which I think is a little bit...
Which I'm confused about.
Look, last year was one of the most shockingly bad years I think any team could have had.
Sure.
It reminded me a little bit of year 1 with Steve Nash and Dwight Howard in Los Angeles. I know at SI we had that great cover, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Didn't turn out that way. Turned out really
so
bad for the Lakers. Same thing with the Sixers. They get Paul George. They've got a big 3, arguably the best big 3 in the NBA going into last season. And that team never got off the ground. Joel Embiid missed all of training camp, first part of the season. Paul George got hurt. At the end of the year, it was like the Yabusele show in Philadelphia, and the wheels had come off the wagon completely. They're still a team that is entirely beholden to the health of Joel Embiid. If Joel Embiid is a part-time player, they're not going to win anything. But is there reason to be optimistic that he's going to be able to play going into next season? If he can play, and if Paul George can stay on the floor, Tyrese Maxey's an all-star. Like, that's still a team that on paper has the best big three in that conference, given that Embiid's a former MVP, George's a former all-star, Maxey's an all-star. Like, they've got the roster on paper to win a conference championship.
Yes.
I mean, how are people sleeping on the 76ers?
Absolutely. I'm confused about this. I mean, look, I get it. There are people who feel like they've been through the cry wolf routine with Joel
got burned
Embiid
last year with
and
them.
just feel like I can't ever rely on that guy to be healthy. But Kawhi Leonard made it through the entire playoffs this past year, Chris. Anything could happen. So I'm not ready to give up on him. And because if you fall in the camp that you're not ready to give up on him, then you have to acknowledge this could be a very dangerous team. And look, there's a fool me once, fool me twice thing. I'm willing to give this particular roster with those 3 stars a second set of belief, a second chance in my personal, yeah, they could do it kind of category. And if they fall apart again this year, then we know what we know. But they think they've got Joel Embiid's health problems a little bit more under control, that he finally kind of faced what was going on and they took decisive action. Paul George is always going to be someone who doesn't play 80 games a year, but, there's definitely been seasons where he has played much more than people remember, and he can show some real toughness. I mean, the defensive presence that he can bring is still real, and obviously he's got a lot to offer offensively. Tyrese Maxey, I think, is going to continue to grow. I just think last season was just such a cesspool of swampy messiness that he didn't have the chance to do that. So whatever leap we expected him to take last season, I think he will continue to take this season. I think you gotta give them they could have a chance to win, and if things are going well, they could be a favorite to get to the Eastern, to win the East and get to the finals. It's such a coin flip with them.
If we get into December and Embiid is healthy and playing like the former MVP, and Paul George is healthy and playing like the guy we saw his last year with the Clippers, and Maxey, who has been, just on a rapid ascent, is playing like him. Like, we're going to stop talking about them as just a team that can win the East, as a team that can be a threat to win a championship. Because, look, I think one of the things working for Philadelphia is the same thing that's working for Cleveland, that Boston's not there. Like, Philadelphia had huge issues with the Celtics year after year. Permutation after permutation. The Ben Simmons Sixers had problem with the Celtics.
Yeah.
The recent versions had problems with the Celtics. Al Horford's no longer around, we don't think, to deal with or to cause the problems he caused to Joel Embiid. So the lane is kind of clear for the Sixers as well. I just think we're going to find out very quickly. Like, if Embiid goes through a full training camp and is healthy, great. Paul George back healthy, great. They didn't make a lot of moves this offseason. Like, Trendon Watford is in, Yabusele is out. They've got VJ Edgecombe. I don't know what you can expect from a rookie, even one that's drafted that high, but he can maybe enter that rotation, give you an energy guy off the bench. Nick Nurse, embattled certainly after last year, but a championship level coach.
I was going to say,
has done it in
I
Toronto.
don't know how you can blame Nick Nurse for anything that happened last year.
No, you can't, but usually you do.
I get it, but I just, why throw? I mean, he's a championship coach. He's very creative mind. I just don't understand why anyone would be thinking he's a quick trigger. It doesn't work, get rid of him. He just had nothing to do with why they didn't do well last year. I'm curious, do you know if the Sixers have a sports psychologist on staff?
I do not. I have not asked that question.
I think it's an interesting question because one of the things with Joel, obviously, last year was physical. There's no question about that. That was the root of everything. But it was also very clear that he had such a reluctance and fear of getting more injured, of not performing well when he was injured. It was the whole, is he going to play or not? Are we 5 minutes before the game? Do we know if he's going to play or not? Where the team thought he was going to play, and he would pull back and say, no, I can't go tonight. And to me, I'm not saying he has any sort of mental weakness there. I'm saying that when you are regularly injured, you have to figure out a new path to get yourself, brain-wise, on the court, taking risks, any of that stuff. It is actually just a new project you have to embark on. And I would be curious if the Sixers as a team or he personally is sort of going through that process also with the rehab physically, because I think that will be a big part of whether Joel Embiid is a success this season or not. I thought the mental aspect, and again, I want to be clear, not mentally weak or lame or wimpy or any of, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about he has been given a set of circumstances that are so substantive And I just think it takes actual specific professional work to figure out how to navigate those. And I hope that that is a part of his routine this coming year, because he's so fun. He has so much potential. I mean, there was a point, I guess a season and a half ago at this point, but he was scoring more than a point a minute that he was playing. I mean, it's just a joy to watch him being happy and playing basketball. And I hope we get that back.
Yeah, and I think this is the last year they can try. Like, I think if this year goes sideways, not to say they can make a lot of roster changes, because that Paul George contract is very difficult to trade. If Embiid is not healthy, he's almost impossible to trade. They went all in on him with that contract extension a year ago, which didn't make sense then, doesn't really make sense now. But, you know, if it works, great. If it doesn't, I don't know what they do with this roster after the season. This is kind of their last shot at all of this.